Hey
Okay.
gamers, thank you so much for joining me today. I have Calzone here, the most hilarious streamer I have seen in the 14 community and a very positive part of what I think is the best game on earth. Would you like to take a moment and introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, I'm Cal. I'm a red panda tie, and I play 14 sometimes. I mostly play 14. And then I play occasional games outside of that on Fridays and Sundays.
Awesome. So people could find you on Twitch. That's where you stream mostly.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll have that link up at the end. So thank you so much for joining me. It is fantastic to get a chance to get to meet you. I am just over the moon getting to meet all these wonderful people. So thank you again.
I
We're
appreciate
gonna,
you inviting me. I was like,
yeah.
someone wants to talk to me?
I was actually worried because honestly, I just sent out like a random Twix, Twitter X slash direct message, and I'm like, oh my god, they're gonna think I'm a creeper. But no, it was awesome. Okay. So let's just start. So let's talk about, can you tell us about your earliest memories of playing video games?
Oh man, I'm old, so I got memories, man. um I I was a kid when like the first console came out, and I vaguely remember having the regular Nintendo. It was like we got that as a Christmas present, and playing Mario Brothers. And I think one of my favorite memories from back then is when we played Duck Hunt.
Oh, yeah.
I was
Right.
a pro at Duck Hunt. I could Duck Hunt like a madman. Them ducks had no chance.
Did you ever put like the gun right up against the TV, or were you just like,
Oh no, but my sister did. And I'd be like, Mom, she's cheating.
awesome? Awesome. So right in at the original Nintendo.
Yeah, I was born in '80s, so like I vaguely recall having an older console, but I don't remember what it was called. And it had like Pong, the little beep
Oh,
beep
yep.
beep.
I've played that. I started with the ColecoVision, which was another 80s console that had like a telephone like keypad. Very bizarre, but yeah.
I just ours had like a joystick with like a red button on the top. That's all I remember. And you just moved it, and you just like push the button to like not die.
Very simplistic. How have video games influenced your personal interests and hobbies?
um, it wasn't until 14 that I really had any kind of game influence me. But I think because 14 was an MMO and I'd never been in an MMO, like I had someone that had been trying to get me into MMOs for a while, and then I didn't know anything about Final Fantasy, but I liked the graphics. I was like, "Oh, this is a cute game." And then I ended up meeting like people that I'm still friends with to this day. Like the FC I'm on. I've known them for like almost 10 years, and
Oh, wow.
they're still like some of the best people I know. And
Wow.
because of them, I I learned to love like Final Fantasy and just games in general. Like I wasn't really a heavy gamer until 14. And then it made me interested in like the music and the art, and like wanting to do like content creation for it. So that's probably the biggest influence I've had is 14.
Wow. So for 10 years, like, did you start with 1.0 or did you come in a realm before?
No, I was in active beta of 2.0.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I knew a little bit about 1.0. All I knew was that there was something about flower pots and a lot of polygons. um, but I wasn't around for the 1.0 saga. So I learned
Mhm.
about it secondhand, like way after. And I did active beta with the person that was trying to get me into MMOs at the time. And then after that I just kind of became hooked.
Awesome. Yeah. No, absolutely, I feel that, and the game was so different back then. Like,
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I started, the end of 2014? No, the end of 2013 into 2014, so, like, the first year of ARR.
Oh yeah.
So you remember things like Grinding Fates and Coerthus and
I still have pictures from like when I first started out and like the my little baby hotbar as a summoner. I was like, oh man, look at that. Look at that cross that cross class action right there. The old
yeah.
days when I could cast protect as a summoner.
Ah, there you go, yeah. Back in my day, we had to
When
run
I was
across the
your
Eorzea.
age, I could cast protect as a summoner, and nobody had any issues with it.
Absolutely. Have you ever learned any valuable life lessons from playing video games?
Oh, my answer's gonna be 14 related.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
Excuse me. Endwalker has probably taught me a lot. It's resonated with me on a very personal level, mostly because it seems to like address a lot of things that I struggle with mentally. And the whole premise of Endwalker kind of helped me shift my perspective on just like a lot of things on like life and what's is it worth being a pessimist or an opportunist or a realist or any of that stuff, and like what do I want out of life and how do I want to see things. And so now it's just kind of like trying to get myself to get where I want to go.
Mhm. No, especially Endwalker, Shadowbringers, so powerful emotionally. Were you kind of like the rest of us and ended the credits with the tears rolling down your face?
I bawl like a damn baby.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'm not afraid to bawl like a baby.
Uh, how have video games impacted your social life and relationships?
Given that I am very antisocial in real life, I've got like a lot of social anxiety that's developed over, especially over like the last 4 years or so. 14's been kind of like my way to have any kind of socializing. In some ways, it was like the only socializing I've had.
Mm.
So, when you're a single mom too, like you don't really have the option to go out a lot, especially when you don't have people around to like help you and you're kind of just on your own. You can't just say, "Hey, yeah, I'm going to go hang out," because you got a kid at home. You can't leave the kid alone.
Right.
And you don't got anybody to watch the kid. So you end up just being in a house alone a lot. And 14 has been probably my one saving grace because it lets me interact with people. And then through that, it led me to streaming, which led me to interacting with other people and like giving me a kind of like a little happy place on the interwebs.
Awesome. Do you find that the quality of the community has it had an impact on that? Like, do you experience that most of your relationships in Final Fantasy have been positive ones?
Yeah, I'd say like 99% of it. I mean, there's like a handful of times where like you come across like a shitty person and you're like, well, man, that sucked. But there's so few and far between, at least that I've experienced,
Mhm.
that I think of it positively. And like I said, the FC that I'm in, like I'm friends with all of them, and I've been friends with a lot of them for, going into double digits. And I think of them as more of a real life friend than any real life friend I have right now because
Yeah.
they're the ones I interact with on the most often. Even though right now I don't talk to them very often because I just got so much going on. Like I don't feel like I always feel like I can go back and I'll always be welcomed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nice to have a home base, I guess, even if it's online.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing. Have you ever used skills or strategies learned from video games in real life situations?
I think the perspective thing right now is probably the one. Um, like especially when like the whole Venat speech in that infamous scene, and the Xenos line actually when he talks to Alice about, talk to 1,000 people and they'll give you 1,000 answers and they're all correct. It kind of helped. I've been trying to use that to kind of readjust the way I think about things, about like it's okay to be sad, but that doesn't mean that I have to live in sadness. And the prayer that that the people of Razahan talk about, see your life as it is, and that's how you get stronger. I think that one in particular, I've been really resonating with, and I've been really trying to like mold my way of thinking to be more like that, because it's kind of like it's harsh, but it's like really it's got a lot of hope to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a lot of momentum towards like continual positivity, especially online, with regard to social accounts and that sort of thing. So to kind of increase acceptance around being melancholy or being in grief is huge, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mhm. Okay. How do you think video games have evolved over time, and how has that impacted your experience with them?
I mean, back in the day it was, single player. It was just you in a fictional world, and there was like a clear objective, beat the level,
Mhm.
or save the princess, or kill all the ducks. As technology has grown, it's become more complicated, and now there's like so many nuances to games. And no two people will have the same experience with a video game like they used to in the back in the day.
Mhm.
Like anybody that played Mario Brothers when they were kids probably had the same experience because it was new and exciting. But if you have like 10 people and you ask them, what did you think of Baldur's Gate? You'll have 10
I
different experiences because it's so nuanced and there's so many different variations to how the game can go. Like, I remember seeing posts of people saying, "Oh, this is great," and then I would see a post from Jesse Cox talking about how he was once again screwed over by RNGesus, and he was having nothing but bad luck.
No, that is beautiful. I was hoping you would use Baldur's Gate as a recent example because I've had conversations with people and it sounds like we're playing two different games. Like the
Yeah,
events become so different based on your choices that you can't even recognize it as being the same game.
and that's like the beauty of video games now. I think is that they're so advanced that you can you can have conversations about the same game and they'll be vastly different just because of how the game worked for you.
Yeah. No, it's beautiful. Have you ever faced any negative stereotypes or criticism for being a video game enthusiast slash VTuber? And how would you respond to that?
I mean, I grew up not being allowed to play many video games
Mm.
because that was always considered a quote unquote boy thing. So as a girl, you didn't play video games. You played with dolls. And if you did play a video game, it was like Mario Kart, or like, Mario Brothers. It was like the cutesy fun games that didn't have a lot of things. Like Mortal Kombat was a boys' game. You don't touch Mortal Kombat. You can play Donkey Kong Country, but that dude over there, that's your friend, he's going to go play Mortal Kombat. and do the finales without you. And so I remember wanting to play different video games, but not being allowed to because it was like looked down upon back then. And VTubing, I haven't received anything, but I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that I'm kind of in a unique situation. I'm not your typical VTuber model. Like, I'm clearly not blessed in the chest department on this model. And I'm pretty much covered up everywhere. Except I got shorts on. But even my shorts, I've got like knee-high socks. So I'm a unique breed of VTuber model. So I don't have a lot of interactions with the kinds of people that do judge you.
Right.
And I mean, I kind of chose it for that. That's kind of why I did it, because I have to. I know a lot of people are like, I don't want to show my face, but for me, it's more like I don't want anybody to find out where we are for my kids' safety.
Right.
And I mean, me being self-conscious of having really low self-esteem aside, like it was always about safety. If I was going to stream, I wanted it to be in a way that was safe for my kid. Which is why I didn't really start taking the idea of streaming seriously until that free Vroid studio came out, which is like where you can make a free 3D model and you don't have to pay for it. And then that's when I was like, okay, I could technically then be a streamer because I'm still technically showing a face. It's just a cartoon face. And so my very first model, ironically, was a 3D model when everybody was a 2D art model, and now everyone's going to 3D. And I'm like, wait, I'm a 2D. What happened? But yeah, 3D, that was my first. And that was the reason why I was like, okay with streaming finally, was because I had a way to show my face, which was like statistically proven that people with their face cam were able to get more views than those without a face cam. But I could protect myself and my kid and not show anything about me that like would expose where we are or who we are.
Right. No, that's awesome. How do you balance your time between playing video games and other responsibilities or activities?
Nowadays I mostly play on the weekends when I'm streaming. Just so that I don't burn out, because I don't want to get so sick of video games that I don't want to play them. And during the week, I want to let my kid use the computer so she can play her games and have fun with her friends. And I'll dabble in a game here and there if I feel like it, but I've been content just playing on the weekends. But I really don't have, I mean, I'm a single mom. If I'm not taking care of the kid or playing or streaming, I'm sleeping. Napping is my favorite hobby. I do a lot of napping.
I respect that a great deal. So you mentioned burnout. Can I ask something controversial? So
Yeah.
Endwalker, like people have been talking for the past maybe 6 months about the end game contact for Endwalker and not having a massive multiplayer zone for the content for the relic weapon. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I find that so funny because so many people hated Eureka.
Yes.
I'm like, do you guys forget how much people hated Pagos and Pyros and Hydatos? And the only thing that people liked about Hydatos was the final raid, but even then it was so hard that like most people gave up for a while. And like Baja was kind of cool, but once people were high enough to like not need the instance raids, all the people coming in were screwed. You couldn't like I remember so many times going into Baja, trying to get through that first Castrum fight because I finally got leveled on my potato tot and could not get an instance because not enough people would join.
Yeah.
And then I
That
think they
was
finally adjusted it so that it would like go down in difficulty or whatever, but it was like it took away the whole like I still haven't finished Baja on like my Talter ego, which was originally my main girl. Because I couldn't get anybody to like go with me to do the final rating. And I was like, well, I'm not gonna bother. And also I didn't like how the weapons looked. I was like, this isn't whatever. I'm
No, the scaling on that is rough. Like for the Dalrida and especially for Delubrum Reginae, like you can go in a party of 4 or a party of 2, but you are not clearing that thing. Like you are not.
I think right now, I mean, anybody that's been playing this game from the start knows that this is kind of par for the course when it comes to the end of a patch cycle going into an expansion. Everyone's always like, there's nothing to do. It's so boring. But I think the difference is now there's so much attention on us because of the wave that came before Endwalker.
Yep.
And Endwalker is in a unique position where it's not a traditional cycle where it was like you had the base game and then it had the concluding story going through the patches. They did it differently where it was like everything concluded in the base game and then the patch was just kind of like a setup story for like a future expansion leading up to the new ARR, which is what Dawn Trail is basically. It's ARR 3.0, I guess, because it's not 2.0, it's 3.0.
Yeah.
And so many people just grind the fuck out of this game because they're trying to make content out of it. And they're streaming it like 8 hours a day, 5 days, 6 days a week. And so, yeah, you're going to run out of stuff to do because you're doing it all. And I can see why people would be like, oh, there's like, I'm burnt out, or like, there's nothing left to do because they've done everything, or they're bored because everything that they wanted to do, they've already done. But like Island Sanctuary, I thought that was a good idea. I thought it had potential. I liked that instead of like Bosch or whatever. But it wasn't fully fleshed out, I think, the way people intended it to be. And I think they're hyping, like it got hyped in a way that was inaccurate, which made people turned off to it. And so now people are looking back to like Eureka and Baja with like rose tinted glasses, like, oh, back in those days. And it's like, man, I hated those days. What are y'all talking about? None of y'all liked that shit back then. What do you mean?
Awesome. No, I appreciate.
So sick of having to like try to sneak past the damn dragons and then get my ass whooped by a freaking fire elemental just going.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you so much for sharing your opinion on that because yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said there. Just I think it's just a bunch of different things that happened all at the same time combined with rose tinted glasses on the past and how it was, but yeah, thank you. Can you share a favorite video game memory or experience that has had a lasting impact on you?
Probably Fable 2. Fable 2 was the first time I played a game on a console that wasn't a Nintendo. My partner at the time, who was Kiddo's dad, he had an Xbox 360, and he got me Fable 2 because he thought I would like that game. And I'd never played a video game where there was like physical changes to your character based on your actions. And I thought it was so much fun to like see how cool my character looked the more I did things. And like I'm a goody goody. I can't do the bad things, so my character was always like the benevolent. But I would see pictures of people that chose like all the bad answers. And I was like, man, they look they look funky. They would get like these dark lines on their bodies, and they would like start to grow horns and stuff like that. And I'd never seen that in a game before. Like you see consequences for actions in visual novels, but it wasn't like that for video games where like you could have like branching paths depending on what you did. And Fable 2 was the first time I was exposed to that, and it was so much fun. And I remember the first time I got to try to bartend in the game, and I was like, this is great. And I think that's when I really started liking video games as an adult. Because before that, I hadn't really touched video games since like my freshman year of high school.
Mm.
With the occasional like if you on the occasional times I would play like old arcade games. But I never played like actual like current title games. And that was the first time, and then that made me really like console gaming. And so I was a huge Fable 2 fan.
Awesome. No, that's a great answer. Thank you. How do you see video games continuing to impact your life in the future? Like, are you a lifer? Is this going to be you in 80 years?
I mean, I think it just depends on how video games evolve.
Mm.
I'm not into like the whole violent kind of video games, but I do like video games that are fun. And I think as long as there's a type of game out there that I can play, then I'll keep playing them. And I do want to like eventually have that as something that my kid and I can do together. Like
Mm.
maybe we can play 14 together. I can be one of those parents that goes, "Hey, I'm going to have you go gather some stuff for me. I'm going to go make dinner. I'll be right back."
Oh my god, you read my mind. I was just gonna say that. Train them to love gathering, and yeah.
I'm purposely waiting until she's 11 right now. So I'm waiting until she's older. I know a lot of but she wants to do it while I'm streaming, so I'm like, "You're going to have to be older for that."
Mhm.
So when she's old enough, we'll get her a little model, and we'll do streams where she gets to experience 14 for the first time, and I'll tag along and just troll her like the good parent that I am.
Preparing her for the future. Yeah.
I will be the best parental. I will troll the ever living fuck out of her.
Oh, that's beautiful. How do you think video games have impacted the entertainment industry as a whole?
I think video games used to be considered an escape outlet, and now they're considered an entertainment venue.
Mm.
I don't know if that makes sense, but it used to be you played video games because you wanted to get away from things. But now you play video games because you want to be entertained like you're going to a movie or watching a TV show. And
Yeah.
so if a game doesn't offer enough entertaining value, then it's not considered a good game anymore. And I think that's a huge difference between how games used to be and how games are now. Like, yeah, you had fun back then, but I mean, because like I said, it was single player. So
Mhm.
it was more about just like, trying to escape the stress of the real world by like getting sucked into like a fantasy world and trying to beat up the bad guys and stuff like that. And now we want the movies in our video game. Like, let me have my video game, but also let me have my bag of popcorn so I can watch the cutscenes
Right.
and have the movie experience at the same time.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, and some of these video games have movie budgets, like multi-million dollar budgets.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
But
I
I think
remember.
that's why, because we've started to see, we want something to entertain us whenever we're paying money for it. It's like, if I'm spending this money, it
Mhm.
better like make me laugh and clean my kitchen counter, you know?
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Have you ever played a video game that inspired you to pursue a certain career or field of study?
Um, I mean, in some way, the reason why my love for art, I mean, I always liked art, but I think video games and like seeing what could be done with graphics in video games made me love art more. And even though I'm not an artist by any stretch of the means, it makes me love looking at art. And nowadays I like looking at game art instead of like traditional art. Like every time we see concept art for a zone in 14 or something, I'm like, "Woo! It's so pretty." Or like all the 16 promo pictures that came out, all that artwork. I was like,
Oh, yeah.
I want the art book.
Yeah.
And so I kind of went into school for art therapy. I had to stop because pandemic and all that, but a lot of it was inspired by me wanting to kind of show that love to other people and give them a way to kind of like use that type of art to like help them kind of express themselves when they have no other way to express it. But yeah, video game concept art is really what got my love for art kind of kicked into full gear.
Wow, beautiful. How do you think video games can be used as a tool for education or personal development?
I am so glad you asked this question because we just finished playing a game that answers this so good. Okay.
Awesome.
So I played Chants of Sennaar recently. And it's this really cool game where it's based on the Tower of Babel, and each level is a different civilization, and you have to decipher their language and then figure out how to get the different levels to communicate with each other.
Oh, cool.
And somebody had said, wouldn't this be such a great idea for learning a language? I was like, yes, make this a game so I have to learn Japanese. I will play Chants of Sennaar Japanese edition if it lets me learn how to. It's such a cool idea, and I'm like, I'm surprised it hasn't been done before. But I absolutely loved that they used the idea of translating language into a game. I'm like, there's so many options that this could be used for like education. And I kind of want to see something like it be made where it's like actual language that you're learning while you're trying to like progress through the game like you did in this game.
Oh, absolutely. If someone's able to memorize all the steps to a savage fight or an ultimate, they can learn another language easy. Like,
Yeah, and the Chants of Sennaar game, it was so cool because it's like you had the people talking to you and you had to decipher based on the clues around you. And eventually you started putting clues together like, oh, this is when they're doing plural, this is when they're doing verbs, this is when they're doing like this is how they're speaking. And they spoke differently on each level. And so you had to figure out how they spoke in order to understand what they were trying to tell you in order to get to the next level. And then there was like these communication ports, and you had to translate between two different peoples using their language. So you'd have one group that talked in like authoritarian, and then you had another group that talked in Yoda speak. And so you had to like translate between the two. And I'm like, this would be so great to learn another language. Please, somebody make this.
wow. No, that's awesome. Definitely check it out. If I can find the link to it, I'll put it in the description below for anyone interested in checking
It's
it out.
on Steam.
Awesome.
But it's like Sennaar. It's a really cool game.
Awesome. Okay. Have you ever played a video game that helped you cope with a difficult time in your life?
Yeah, I would say Endwalker is definitely, especially with like, I suffer from like long-term depression and anxiety, and the whole borderline thing. It's good times. My brain's all messed up. But going through Endwalker, like I said, it resonated with me on like a completely personal level because it was like opening my eyes to things and like I can find a way out of this. You know, like I don't have to be overwhelmed with despair. I can acknowledge the grief or the sadness and still manage to find a way forward. I guess when you're 43, you get tired of like trying to not talk about it. You kind of learn like you got to talk about it if you're going to have any chance of overcoming it. And I think Endwalker kind of helped with that cuz like I said, that scene with Vanat when like towards the end where she's like being imperfect beings, like that whole line,
Yeah.
that really got to me. The thing with Vanat really helped because being fractured imperfect beings, and it's like we ask ourselves the question, why are we born just to suffer? And then like when you meet with, okay, spoilers for people who haven't watched Endwalker, block your ears.
Yeah,
block your ears. When she talks to us about when we go and finally have our chit chat with her, and she goes, this is like a fundamental truth. And she says, to live is to suffer, and in suffering find strength and hope and love. That really got to me. And that's kind of stuck with me since the game. And I've been kind of falling back on that whenever I feel myself kind of getting overwhelmed with like my issues. Mm-hmm. And it was such a nice way of putting it.
Okay,
you can unplug your ears.
No, and it's so true, and that's kind of the price of love is heartbreak. The price of love is grief. It's kind of the other side of that coin, and you can't have one without the other. So
yeah, there's a line from Tori Amos who from her song Ophelia where it goes, Pain waltzes in with her sister, or change waltzes in with her sister Pain, waiting for you to wish it away. And I think that kind of resonates on the same principle.
mm-hmm. Yep. How do you think video games can be used to bring people together and build communities?
I've seen this on Saturday Night Shenanigans when we go looking at in like club hopping and like checking out events and stuff like that. And you've seen it with like LunarCon, and there's been other like conventions that happen in the game. And it might be an MMO, but it's also a place where you can have social gatherings, and it's like I don't know if you ever played Second Life.
I've heard of it. I hadn't played it myself.
Second Life was like my first exposure to that kind of environment where you could like have these social events happening with and be interacting with other people, but you're technically not there. Mm-hmm. And you have an avatar. And like the whole point of Second Life was that you're literally having a life inside the digital space. So you create a character, you can go shopping, you can like go to bars and clubs. They have like people make like actual like real life places like Paris and freaking New York and stuff. You can go and just like walk around. And they had like art exhibits and like video games, like they would make their own video games and stuff in there, and role playing. And 14 is kind of like the light version of Second Life because it's inside of a MMO meant to be for Final Fantasy, not necessarily for having a Second Life, but they've figured out how to make it work. And it just shows that if you have enough people, you can make really cool communities, and you can bring people together, and it can be an amazing, amazing thing to see.
Yeah, it's powerful. Like these communities built on just one facet of a game. And all the thought and everything that goes into it. It is something I haven't dabbled in, but that has always amazed me, is just how
Like, the whole
deep
rise
those
of the
goes.
DJ scene is a good example,
Mhm.
because back like, it used to just be you used your Bard. You just made you used a
Mm.
little MIDI player to, like, have it play the Bard songs for you, and you would just go to, like, people's houses and just kind of, like or and then, like, people started doing, like, the multiple players doing
Mhm.
all of the things at the same time, and then we were just talking about this over the weekend, and it was like, I don't know who started it, but one day someone said, "Why can't I DJ like in Second Life on 14?" Because in Second Life, that the DJs were actual DJs that played their own music. And someone came up with the brilliant idea of like, why can't I do that in 14? And then they figured out if you used your stream to play the music, you could have everybody listen to the stream while they're in the game in the venue. And then like the whole club scene just like blew up. And I was like, this is amazing.
Wow. No, so amazing. So amazing what they put into it. Have you ever played a video game that challenged your beliefs or changed your worldview?
Hmm. No.
Okay.
I don't know if I've played enough video games. I mean,
Have you ever are you on team Xenos or team Emmett Selk? Have they resonated with you? Are you just like good guy?
no, I mean, I'm more of like, I don't know when it comes. Well, I will say, like I said, that one line with Xenos kind of resonated with me when he was like, if I gave you a good enough reason, would it justify my actions? And it wasn't that it changed my worldview, but it was nice. It was more like it was nice to see that there was a game not afraid to call out that bad is really in the eye of the beholder. And if you justify it hard enough, you can justify pretty much anything.
That is absolutely true.
And I
And yet
guess
on the
I respected the balls that they had for putting that in there.
Yeah, and even the attempts they make, especially with Emmett Silk, to get us to feel protagonistic feelings towards the antagonists, to understand that we're just on opposite sides of a conflict, but that doesn't mean we're very different from one another. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I loved that about Emmett, that they kind of made him human enough that you were like, I can see why you're doing what you're doing, but this is really more about your ideals versus my ideals and
Mhm.
which one's got the stronger belief in their ideals.
You want to kill me? I don't want to die.
Yeah, pretty
No.
much. I mean, he had, he was an ancient. I had the power of God in anime. I mean, there was just and the power of friendship and
Friendship.
portals to other rifts, but I was a little OP. But I just sometimes I feel like that doesn't translate to real world, and sometimes games are afraid to go there because then people are like, well, what about these people? They were horrible people. And because games are so afraid of causing like issues, they tend to not really delve into those kind of ideologies. So I like and I respect the game for doing that.
Mhm.
And I like games that do that, even outside of 14. Like a game that's not afraid to kind of like touch on a subject that isn't whole like comfy or
Mhm.
can cause a lot of division, but they're not afraid to like make you look at it from another point of view. I respect those.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Yeah, awesome. How do you think video games can be used to promote empathy and understanding of different perspectives? It sounds like a lot of where we were already talking to in the first place, but
Yeah. Um, yeah, a lot of video games, it's mostly a you versus me or an us versus them kind of situation. And I don't know about other Final Fantasy titles. I don't know if they're all about like 14 where like they show that there's more than one way to look at a situation when it comes to their villains.
Mhm.
But like the whole scene with Garlemald, I was watching Grinding Gear talking about their run through of Garlemald recently because they're running through Endwalker for the first time.
Mhm.
And they brought up a really good point that you go into it looking at Garlemald as the bad guy because of everything that's happened in up to this point.
Mhm.
And a lot of people complain that the Garlemald sect is a little bit slow, but they do it on purpose because they want you to understand just how rough it is. And even though and I think Quintus and Euless are a good example of that, where it's
Mhm.
like they were talking about like Quintus is like is like that trope of like they can't fit in the new world. There's no place for them in this new society. And Euless is kind of like the younger generation where they can see past this strict mindset of, we're better than you. And even in the patches, like when they talk about when you see the two guys, I forget their names in like 6.2 or something or 6.3, where you're dealing with those dignitaries from Garlemald, and one of them
Mhm.
just does not want to cooperate and still calls you a savage and stuff. And it's like everybody else has moved on from that. Like um and it isn't until you save them before they're like, "Oh, maybe you're not so bad after all." It's like, it took you nearly being killed, but I guess better late than never.
It's kind of, yeah, what have you done for me lately situation. Yeah.
Yeah, and even like the girl in the beginning of the Garlemald story, when you go and try to help out those people
Mhm.
and like where that ends up, you kind of still feel bad for them because you kind of realize like it forces you to stop and go, this is actually it makes sense that they would be so hesitant to trust us because they were raised to think that what we do is like abhorrent
Mhm.
and ungodly or that kind of thing. And that can directly translate to the way the world works now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That some of the reactions you have with people you're arguing with online are probably due to just their circumstances or the way they've been raised or what they've been through or yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Have you ever played a video game that you felt had a particularly impactful story or message? Other than 14, right?
Um I mean, this is going to sound weird, but Nier Automata,
Ah.
I watched a playthrough of Nier Automata and I never played it myself, but even just watching it, I loved the story because it kind of the way that they talk about 2B and 9S's story and A2 as well about, you know, even and you like using the concept of an android to kind of talk about human subjects. I thought was such an amazing idea. And like, what do you do when you see someone that you care about, get hurt? Or like, how do you handle like when you have to like do something that you don't want to do that would like maybe take away someone, like you like to take someone's life away. Like, how do you handle that kind of trauma? And then him using androids to kind of talk about this, and like the whole Adam and Eve thing about how they wanted to be human, and they thought in order to be human they had to fight, because Adam thought you had to, you had to die in order to be human, and he wanted to experience that. It was just a really, really cool way of talking about situations that have been in other video games but didn't hit the same way.
Just powerful. So I have a burning question I need to
Okay.
know. I haven't played any Nier games myself or seen them played, but does playing or watching a Nier game give you any more understanding of what happened at the end of the raid patch than not having played? Like, do you know what the raids
Oh,
were about in 14?
yeah, when you finish doing the help quests.
I mean, I played through it. I got through all the raids, and then you do the quests after the raids for like 4 weeks, and they give you the ending, and I'm like, I don't know what this is.
My guess is that, and I mean, without talking to Yakutaro and asking him, hey, what does that mean? My guess is that Anog comes back and takes him with her to wherever world she went to. She came back and got him. But I also think that the story, I think in some ways maybe the story doesn't make as much sense, because I think the ending, my personal thing is, I think he intended for the story to be that the girl would be the one that stays and the boy would be the one that leaves. But it was based on what because they asked you to vote.
Yes.
Do you remember
yeah.
that?
Yep.
And I think that was the reason why they wanted to see which one was going to leave and which one was going to stay. And so, because the answer was Team Boy, he ended up being the one that had to deal with it. And I think in a lot of ways it ended up being more confusing because it wasn't written in that way. I think it was written to be in reverse.
Okay.
So I think that if the girl was the one that had stayed behind and the boy had been the one that had became, because you find out that the one of them is not real. One of them is just a replica from the orb, because they died in the collapse. And so that one is digital, or it's just an android.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one doesn't want to, like, they know it deep down, but they don't want to recognize it, because that means they have to acknowledge that that person was always gone.
Okay. See, that's the
And
best explanation I've heard.
and so one thing that I think would help is if they would have told us what was in the letter, because it just says, I've been to another world, I've seen it. And so that's why I'm thinking that the ending is that the girl comes back and finally takes him with her, because she's finally able to like solve the dilemma with the robots and that orb, and is able to come back and take him to this world, and it's safe so that they can be together. That's the only thing I can think of.
No, I love it. I love that much better than anything I came up with. So, thank you. How do you think video games can be used to address social or political issues?
I mean, like Nier and games like Endwalker and 14, and even just like most video games, they usually, what makes them good is that they do talk or touch on some social or political issue. And is done in a way that makes you want to see what their perspective is.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, you know, like we were talking about, like the whole Garlemald thing, like that's a whole political and social thing where it's like they believed that in order to save everybody, they needed to conquer everybody. But then at the same time, the people in the home capital thought that they were doing the right thing, but they closed their eyes to the reality of that everybody that was being conquered was being treated like absolute dog shit. Because it's like, put your hand in the sand, la 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 la, don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
We're doing the good thing. We're the good guys. And like in Nier, you've got the androids versus the machines. And the machines are trying to understand how to be human. And so then, like, when you come across, it's called a pacifist village, where there's a group of robots that have broken away from like the hive mind kind of thing, and they want to live in peace. And there is a storyline that goes through that connects to one of the bosses that you meet with prior to meeting this village. And through the differing, because there's like 24 endings to this game.
Oh wow.
And in Automata, you play the game multiple times. And through those multiple times, you find out more things about the world and what's happening. And so you learn more about these machines that are supposed to be like the bad guys. And you find out that, they just want to survive. They were created, but they don't want to, they're just fighting for their own survival. And they're having experiences that are almost human-like, but they don't know how to process it because they're not people. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I like that, it kind of touches on like, like you could consider the machines to be one group of people in real life, and you can consider the androids to be another group of people in real life. And you can apply it to a myriad of situations where it's one group versus another group, and this group thinks that they're doing the right thing, and this group thinks that, they're in the right. And it's like, well, who's right then? Mm-hmm. And can you be right and wrong at the same time?
Yeah. Do you think it's almost easier to have some of the more difficult conversations in the context of a video game, where you can put like a hypothetical in place of an actual people or an actual organization?
I think in our society now, yes, because we're very much like, anytime it comes to real life issues, it's now very reactionary versus like, I have an opinion, you have an opinion, we can talk about our opinions and try to see from each other's perspective. Now it's very much, if like, there's like this meme about someone saying, I really like waffles, and then somebody goes, oh, so you hate pancakes. And they're like, no, I just said I like waffles.
Yeah.
I didn't say I hated pancakes. I just said I like waffles. What the hell? And
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of that's the unfortunate reality that we're in right now. It's like, if you don't say it this way, then everyone goes, oh, so that means you meant something else. And it's like, no, it just means I said this. And you can't say something without a group of people saying, fuck you.
Yeah.
And using video games to kind of tell the story, I think in a lot of ways, especially if you're talking about it to younger kids, is a good way to kind of help them understand situations that are maybe a little too hard to explain in a real world scenario. Mm-hmm. Like, you can talk about empathy or societal issues in the context of a video game with younger kids, because you can be like, do you see how this character was treated so mean because of this and that? That wasn't very nice. and you can kind of like teach them about how, oh, and look what that character did. They came and helped them. You know, it can be used to help kids understand the world around them without exposing them to all of the trauma of like what's like the real world version of it.
No, absolutely. It's just an example without the emotionally charged bits behind it.
Yeah.
Awesome. And have you ever played a video game that you felt has a positive impact on your mental health or well-being?
Probably Stardew Valley.
Awesome.
And that sounds so silly. But there's and the reason why excuse me, is because of Seth. The old drunkard of the town. If you romance him, you go through his story arc and you learn about his alcoholism, and you end up intervening and helping him to kind of, and he eventually learns to like, he ends up basically sobering up. But it was nice to see, because as someone who's grown up in a family that has alcoholism, and I grew up with a parent with alcoholism, seeing the story play out kind of validated the experiences I felt, and seeing that story conclude and like there being kind of like a happy ending where they're like, I'm going to go to the bar, but they drink soda. And it's like, you know, it was nice to just feel like even in such a cozy little game, you could get validation like that. Like your experiences are valid because like it's based off of experiences that these games are making their characters, you know? And also just the act of like doing outside of Seth, and just the act of like just playing that game, it's just nice. You know, there's no geopolitical war happening. There's no weird, horrible, bad things happening to other people. It's just like a nice little utopia that you know doesn't really exist, but it's just, it takes a break. It really feels like your brain just gets a break. And I think we need sometimes to have something that lets us take a break from everything, even video games. And so I guess that's why I really like doing like the chill Sunday streams, because I want to showcase those types of games and give people a way to kind of take a break before they have to go delve back into the horror that is the real world.
Well, I think that's why I was disappointed about the Island Sanctuary, as I love Stardew Valley, and I was hoping there was going to be that sort of element in the Final Fantasy game. Like I could
And I think
play a
a
game
lot of
within a
that was
game.
like I think the way that they introduced it wasn't the correct way. The promo image was really misleading, even if they didn't intend it to be. It just gave that impression. And when they were talking about the minions being able to run around and like you were going to be able to like, you know, farm on this island, like everyone's immediately going to think Stardew Valley. And I don't know why Square Enix didn't think that everyone was going to think Stardew Valley. But and then like it showed like the horse and the chocobo, and I was like, ooh, am I going to get to have like a barn?
Right.
I wasn't expecting having to try to go take out an alligator and then have them in my pen with, you know, my sheep.
And then the
This seems like a
mammoth
bad idea.
taskmasters, yeah.
And then like there's like the giant animal, like the giant creatures in with my little itty bitty animals. And I'm like, this seems bad. Like my anxiety makes me think that I'm gonna come back and my sheep are gonna be eaten.
Yeah. No, Oh, absolutely. And just the pressure of producing and
Yeah, it like the min-maxing in order to make to get anywhere, like not just money-wise, but just EXP-wise. And like I think the biggest issue was it didn't let you have people interact with it with you. I think if you could have your friends gather with you, it would have been so much more fun. Like the whole like I remember when I first got in there on stream, I was like telling my chat, "Come in, let's go gather stuff." And they were like, "You can't." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" They're like, "You nobody can gather while they're in there. They can just run around." I'm like, "Well, that's boring." Like why would you do that?
yeah,
Like
no, I mean, like a
it has
house,
such
like
potential.
yeah. No, that is a really good point. That's all for my questions. Was there anything you wanted to talk about or anything that kind of sparked while we were talking that you wanted to mention?
Huh? I will say this. There's a lot of streamers who deserve more recognition than they get, but they don't get it because they don't fit the mold of a big streamer. You know, you're not loud enough, you're not high energy enough, and or you're not lewd enough, or you don't show enough boob. But I think trying to remember that it's okay to not be those things is important because if all you care about is getting big, then you're never going to be happy because you're not going to like the chances of getting big are so small. And like you have to do all the things and then hope you get lucky. And you should do streaming because you like playing games or you like whatever it is that you're streaming and you want to share it with people.
Mhm.
Um that should be the first and foremost. Like yeah, it's nice, it's good to have a goal, but making buku bucks should not be number 1.
Yeah. No, and I mean that's entirely true. I've said it before on my stream too. I would rather have 50 of the most amazing people in a community than 5 million followers.
And I mean like for
Because
me, I I get I have a kid, so like I would like for this to be a viable way of making an income because like my hope is to one day be stable enough for like I want to be able to like if my kid wants to join like the cheerleading squad, I want to be able to buy her uniform, you know? But when I think about it that way, I end up feeling worse about myself because I start comparing myself to everybody else and like, oh, why can't I get big like them? And I have to remind myself that what really matters is that I enjoy it. And if I don't enjoy it, there's no point in doing it.
Mhm.
And so focus on the enjoyment of it and not making money off of it.
No, absolutely. And I think there's a place for a lot more positive content like this, especially on YouTube and in the Twitch spheres. People, I think, are reaching that point where they're almost full of the drama, full of the anxiety, full of the headlines, and are probably looking for some really just wholesome, calming, respectful conversations. So
I mean, I'm at least wholesome on Sundays and Fridays.
there you go. But on that note, like I would love to do more collaboration, especially with smaller streamers. We can build each other up, if
Yeah.
nothing else. So, absolutely, anytime you wanted to do something, hit me up. I am absolutely for it.
Okay. If you ever want to come club hopping with me on Saturdays, I always invite anybody to come out with us.
I might take you up on that offer only because I haven't before. So it would be like my introduction to the club scene.
Yes, we go look for booty.
Awesome. Okay, do you want to tell people where they can find you? I've got kind of your links up on the screen here.
Um, on the Twix, I am CalzoneXIV. Same on Twitch. I make it easy.
Awesome. Okay,
I
and you
stream
stream.
normally Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, usually starting at 10 p.m. Eastern. So you can look me for me there, and then I just talk BS on Twitch, or not Twitch, on Twitter, because I don't know what I'm saying half the time.
Very, very honest of you. Okay. I will also have these links in the description below, so please, please go show Calzone some love. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sharing your stories with us. I wish you all the best, and I look forward to working with you in the future.
Yay, thank you for inviting me.
All right. Bye, gamers.
Bye.